For about the last 12 months, the white media has engaged in all manner of lies, deception, obfuscations, and self serving rhetoric about what the black vote's gonna do. They've been telling themselves all kinds of feel good fiction. That the black vote was on board with Kamala Harris. The black vote was on board with Elizabeth Warren. Oh, the black vote couldn't wait to vote for Joe Biden. The black vote couldn't wait to vote for Bernie Sanders. It just didn't matter who it was, the black vote would warm to any Democrat who's on the ballot. In fact, they were so crazy about the idea that when Mike Bloomberg finally threw his Burger King crown in the ring, they said Mike Bloomberg has black support, widespread black support. He's got a lot of black support. But as I explained to you, when you look at what the white media wrote as Mike Bloomberg's black support, it was the same black support that Kamala Harris had, same black support that Andrew Yang thought he would get, same black support that Joe Biden is attempting to try to have. It's always these black preachers, these black political prostitutes, these boule bootlicks, basically the usual suspects, the same old lineup of sellouts, fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools. The individuals who white power has always trotted out in front of themselves in order to try to mislead and deceive us. That's what the goal has been. We're going to go ahead and take these civil rights retreads and take these clowns who, all you got to do is get some fool with the Bible and black folks will follow them because black people are simple minded like that. Well, prior generations, particularly the black baby boomers, were that simple. Generation X and the millennials are not because they're listening to the black media. So, after a year of the white media telling us that black folks just could not wait to vote for such and such candidate, oh, Kamala Harris's secret weapon is her sorority ties. Oh, because black folks will listen to any Negro who stands in front of a Democrat and says, come vote for Massa. After all that, what does the white media say? Now that we're at the first actual primary where the black vote is going to come into play, South Carolina, you got the Washington Post, who boasts that democracy dies in darkness. That's not an observation, that's a boast from them. We're smothering democracy in the dark, and you guys, you don't even see it happening. But the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos's paper of record, is finally asking the question that they've been putting off and dreading for the longest time, now that they cannot avoid it any longer. Who are black voters supporting in 2020? Here's what we might learn from South Carolina. Now, in their little article, they went through the same old litany of, well, here's how so-and-so is polling such and such. But now they're finally saying something that actually resembles reality. They're pointing out that really none of these candidates actually has black support of any note. Oh, they got the old folks, the graybeards, the 65 to dead demo, the Negroes who vote because it's their habit and it's a Saturday and they don't have anything else to do. Because they're all pretending as if their vote is defending their Social Security check. That's what they tell themselves. But they point out that both Pete Buttigieg and Senator Amy Klobuchar, they have no black support. Buttigieg thought to himself that he was going to chatter his way and babble his way past any sort of black scrutiny, and black people threw his record in his face. Klobuchar, same thing. This person shows up out of nowhere. She might as well have parachuted in here from the moon. She has not built any sort of support with the black community. She just shows up and says, I want to be president and I really like Negroes and vote for me. And apparently she thinks that's going to do it. It didn't. Of course, what the white media leaves out is that the reason that Buttigieg and Klobuchar are getting called out is because of the fact that the black grassroots has mobilized against them. That's what's actually happening here. Buttigieg was not called out by any of the usual black bootlicks. They were not called out by any of the black mouthpieces that white supremacy has as their sock puppets. It was the grassroots who looked and said, well, let's look at Buttigieg's record. What the hell is this man going to do for black people? Well, can't tell you what he's going to do for black people because he hasn't done a damn thing, but I can certainly tell you what he's done to black people. I can tell you what he's done against black people. The white media After so long trying to tiptoe around it, they actually had to admit, okay, Pete Buttigieg's numbers are in the toilet, and here's the reason why. Because what they didn't want to have to do was to indict the policies that white supremacy depends upon in order to keep this racialized pyramid scheme calling itself a nation in the order that white supremacy has imposed. If you want to maintain the racial pecking order, you're going to need violence. And what that means is you're going to need some sort of enforcement arm for white supremacy. Most people call them the police. And Pete Buttigieg has supported the enforcement arm of white supremacy across the board, and now it's about to cost him the presidency, and the white media has done everything that they can to avoid saying that. Same thing with Mike Bloomberg. They don't want to have to say that stop and frisk is going to cost him the presidency, because if they do, they have to admit, well, who cost him the presidency? The people who didn't like stop and frisk. Oh, you mean black people? Yeah, the road to the White House goes straight to the black community, and black people are flexing their muscles. They don't want to have to admit that black people understand exactly the power that we have to be able to reshape the nation's political profile. And that we have gone from just imposing our will on the same old tragic mulattoes like Kamala Harris and Corny Booker. Now what's happening is, as I told you, we would not come into our own until we show that we can punish white supremacists, until we show that there are white people who can be punished for having harmed us and having tried to undermine us. Until we show that we can punish a white person, we will not have come into our own. Now what's happening is it's time for Pete Buttigieg to go down. But it's Mike Bloomberg that they're really concerned about, because all of his billions of dollars have not meant more than the disdain and contempt that black people, particularly those of us who are into black empowerment, the Black Empowerment's Foundation, those of us who are B1, we're the ones been beating the drum and making sure people don't forget about who and what Mike Bloomberg is. White media doesn't want to have to admit that. They don't mind if they say that a candidate's been repudiated, but it's a matter of, we really don't want people saying why he got repudiated, because we don't want to delegitimize and otherwise invalidate the policies that white supremacy depends on. And that brings us to Bernie Sanders. They have no problem saying that Bernie Sanders is picking up black support, though notice how they never really actually show you the black support. They just simply say he's gaining black support. Well, in relative terms, sure. If you want to be fighting over the 65 to dead demo, the black baby boomers, that's fine. You can go ahead and have an arm wrestling contest about that. But it wasn't the black baby boomers who put Barack Obama into office. It was Gen Xers and millennials. That's who did it. Because Hillary Clinton had the 65 to dead demo on lock, and Donald Trump still spanked her at the polls. So what does that tell you? Oh, sure, Bernie Sanders, Bernie the bigot. He may have more black support than Buttigieg, more black support than Klobuchar, but so what? They've got no support at all. Washington Post tries to brag that he initially appealed primarily to younger black voters, but now he's closing the gap with Joe Biden. He's talking about the 65 to dead demo. See, Killer Mike is not going to be able to deliver the black vote. Killer Mike is not the one who speaks for black people who are not senior citizen age. Killer Mike doesn't speak for us. Killer Mike is here to be the smiling, dancing black friend who's going to say, vote for my buddy Bernie the bigot. Well, Bernie Sanders voted for the 94 crime bill. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean Biden's law. Well, that was a different time, and he didn't really understand. And, well, vote for him anyway, because we can't have 4 more years of Trump. Well, the last 3 years have been actually rough on a lot of the other non-white groups who apparently thought that they were on team white supremacy. The Asians are getting brought in for some abuse. They don't like the fact that Donald Trump and his pals are saying this coronavirus is the China virus. Why must you racialize it? Why must you racialize it? The Hispanics are finding out that Donald Trump is giving them new public housing. Only different problem is it happens to be a detention camp on the border, which is merely a way station on your way back to Latin America. Yeah, so as far as I'm concerned, as we told you guys 5 years ago in 2015 when Trump announced his candidacy for the presidency, what the hell was Donald Trump as president going to do that Barack Obama hadn't already allowed to happen? Some of you were scared. A lot of you were scared. because a lot of black folks believe whatever the white media tells them. It's a matter of go ahead and listen to the black media. We're telling you that if Trump becomes president, he's not our friend. He's as much our enemy as Obama is, but that's the point. It's not a matter of Trump's going to be better than Obama. It's a matter of he's not going to be any worse. There will be no difference. Well, at least not for us. And now what you see is, oh man, what were we scared of? Exactly. White supremacy requires Negroes to be in a constant state of fear, scared of this, scared of that, so that we stay on the treadmill and never realize, wait a minute, this treadmill's the worst thing that ever happened to us. The only thing they got is scare talk. The last 5 years have been a nonstop attempt by us to try to put a spine into a largely spineless people, to try to get some folks who weren't thinking to stop and think for a change. And the white media's been banging the drum of fear. And what they find is the drum's got a hole in it because the black media busted that hole in it. Bernie Sanders has not been getting that young black support. And we've been exposing the tricks and the schemes. Oh, I'm going to wipe out college debt, all that student loan debt. Well, you know what? You go ahead and make sure that we get our reparations and we don't have to worry about student loan debt. We'll be able to finance whatever the hell it is we need for ourselves. Won't be out here having to have $100,000 debt just to be able to become some sort of licensed professional. We'll be able to take care of these things on our own. But that's not what Bernie Sanders is offering. He's offering basically a bailout for white people because black folks, especially black males, have been basically barred from institutions of higher learning. And what they find is that the student loan bribe, which is what it basically was, we're going to try to bribe you away from tangibles by telling you that we'll get rid of the sky high tuition that we put on you in the first place. They create the problem, then here they come along with the solution. All you have to do is forego reparations. You know what you really need. That's the scam that Bernie the bigot and Elizabeth, not a Native American, Warren, were trying to push. Something that was going to primarily benefit white people, but telling you that this is what you really need, when the truth is most black folks wouldn't get a dang thing out of it. You need a media that's going to show you when you're being conned. And of course, that brings us to the white media, or at least the Washington Post, giving their analyses of Joe Biden. Joe Biden is basically trying to get his mojo working. Being vice president to Barack Obama didn't turn out to be the magic antidote for all of his prior presidential failings that he thought it would be. He was thinking to himself, well, now that I was vice president to Barack Obama, I'm sure these Negroes, I'll definitely get the black vote and they'll overlook my past. And well, we didn't. This man has been a lifelong racist. Joe Biden is nothing more than a Yankee Confederate. And I guess he thought to himself that he was going to run from his record by showing up and saying, you guys remember me. I stood next to Barack Obama and I didn't puke up my lunch. So what that means is you niggers, you darkies, you coloreds, you black folks should vote for me. Don't worry about my record on race in the past, and don't worry about the things that I've said and done, because after all, if you don't vote for me, you're going to get Trump, and Trump is far worse. What they're finding is black people are no longer shaking in our boots at the mere mention of some horrible fate. White supremacy is used to that. If white supremacy just hints that you better do what we say if you know what's good for you, they're used to Negroes quaking in their boots. Oh, we better be careful. Oh, we might want to run for the hills now. They're used to that. But it didn't happen this time, and they don't have an answer for it. So they just keep saying the same old thing because that's all they can do. No, you are not going to have black people going, oh, God, we can't have 4 more years of Trump. It's a matter of, forget about Trump. Forget about Pence. Forget about Sanders. The black vote has our issue. Our issue is tangibles, of which reparations is merely the tip of the spear. Reparations is just the beginning of tangibles. It's a matter of you got to make annual installments to get this vote. Because that's what it's about. As the people who built this country, we are owed a debt and the rent is due. It's overdue, hundreds of years overdue. And no, you are not going to bring out some pork chop preacher or some political prostitute or some boule butter biscuit bastard who's going to tell us, y'all need to vote for these people because black folks have died for the right to vote. Black folks have died for your right to vote. Yeah, and the Democrats didn't do a damn thing about those deaths, didn't prosecute anybody, didn't bring anybody to justice. Nobody was punished for it. And we got absolutely no tangibles as a result of all this voting that we've been doing. We've been voting, but everybody else benefits except for us. So what we're doing is we are prioritizing ourselves because we should be. America owes a number of debts, but we demand that this country pay its debts in the order in which it acquired them. And there is no debt that this country owes that comes before or is greater than the debt that it owes to the foundational Black Americans, the descendants of American slaves, the people who built this country. And no, you're not going to tell us that the national treasury is empty simply because we came to get our check, as Dr. King said. You're not going to tell us that the national treasury's empty. You got money to bail out Wall Street. You got money to fund Bernie Sanders' harebrained Medicare schemes. You got money to keep the military-industrial complex cherry. You got money to give all sorts of handouts to corporations. Then you got money to make whole the people who built this country, who you ripped off the ancestors of and who you've deprived tangibles from us every day for 500 years. There is no issue that this country has more important than what it owes to us. None. And as far as South Carolina goes, what this is the white media having to tiptoe up to the reality that they have refused to confront for the longest time, which is, man, all of this ignoring those black folks online, it hasn't worked. We figured we were going to just not acknowledge them and black folks would, like the Walking Dead, would shuffle to the polls. Scratch and shuffle, I should say. But that's not what happened. What happened instead is black folks are going, hey, no tangibles, no vote. And these candidates here, man, they all represent the exact same white supremacist policies that they claim Trump represents. It's a distinction without a difference. You know, Donald Trump used to praise stop and frisk. So did Mike Bloomberg. And unlike Donald Trump, Michael Bloomberg was sitting there saying, how the hell do we get more black people in this dragnet? Telling me that a polite racist is worse than a profane racist, that's a distinction without a difference. What's the difference between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump? Donald Trump actually owns a comb. That's the only difference between the two. What's the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? Donald Trump racially profiled and racially discriminated against black tenants in his buildings, and Joe Biden was cheerleading for the people who did. I think that's the real problem that Joe Biden has. He's jealous of Donald Trump. I should have had some money so I could treat black people the way that Donald Trump does. I want to be president so I can do it. That's what's going on here. People are being held accountable for their records. People are not being allowed to run away from their records. And sure, there's always going to be this rump contingent, the stuck on stupid portion of black society. There's always going to be that group. But the thing is, you start getting a critical mass of black people on code. You get a critical mass of black people saying the right things and doing the right things. And what happens is that rump contingent, the dead enders of the black community, those clowns are going to become less and less relevant until they become completely and thoroughly meaningless. Or should I say more meaningless? This is the task that stands before us now. Whenever these guys are holding their political rallies, what they're doing is they're basically having a local meeting of the Legion of Doom to decide how they're going to divide up the spoils of our labors. The labor of our ancestors and the money that they illegally confiscate from us and withhold from our communities. They're deciding how to divide up the spoils that our ancestors built and the money that we continue to generate. So every time they have one of their political rallies or one of their meetings or have an election, that election is absolutely illegitimate unless we are the ones setting the agenda for it. Any political gathering that does not take into account how the people who built this country, the people who laid the foundation for this country, are to be compensated, that is an absolutely illegitimate meeting. It may not necessarily be illegal, but it's damn sure illegitimate. And there is no getting around that reality. So since they're determined that they're going to be having these meetings and they're going to leave us out of the most important discussion that we made possible, they couldn't even have these political meetings if it wasn't for us. So that being the case, we have every right to be there. In fact, we have a right to make sure that we elbow our way in. Now, here's where things get a little bit deep. Black folks have no problem getting beat up for the rights of immigrants, beat up for the rights of feminists and LGBTs and such. We don't mind getting out there to try to be the hero for some anti-war goofballs. As long as there's some white folks out there that are railing against something, black folks will be the first ones wanting to be the hero of the group. Oh, let us be there for that photo op. Donald Trump's rallies, black folks were the ones out there getting hit in the faces and stomped on and spat at and having people punching and kicking and hitting us. And yet the Democrats were not planning to do anything that was going to benefit us. And it needs to be said, a number of those people who you saw at those Trump rallies who were making noise, they were largely Democrat plants. These are people who in many cases were most likely paid just to be there. That happens to be a basic political reality. You can pay people to go to a particular political rally or function and try to be a heckler. You can pay them for that. In our case, that is not something that we should or do need to employ. We don't need to be paying people because of the fact that we are self-starters. People need to understand that whenever you're holding these gatherings, these meetings, you are not going to discuss how to divide up our money and then you're going to decide that black people are not going to be part of that conversation. We're declaring that we are bestowing legitimacy upon ourselves to divide up black people's money. And we're also bestowing legitimacy on shutting black people out of the proceedings. Okay, maybe there'll be a couple of niggers in here, but they'll be off on the side and they have no leverage and what they say doesn't matter. And if they don't need to be bringing up any sort of tangibles or reparations, that's not what this is about. They declare that they give themselves permission to be completely and thoroughly dismissive of our interest and our requirements, which are the most legitimate and the most pressing in the entire country. Now, you see, as long as they are able to conduct their little meetings and we do not show up and show out, as long as we do not make it clear that these meetings are illegitimate and we will not tolerate anyone deciding that they're going to discuss how to divide up our money. If you're going to claim that you're somehow putting policies in place for black people, then you are going to hear from us. We will tell you what the policy is going to be. That's why I like to use that little hashtag, crash their party. Party, being kind of a double entendre, like a political party. But the point is, we have every right to elbow our way into the proceedings. Because that's part of how you make sure that your voice is heard. But it's the last paragraph of the Washington Post little story that is the most salient. It's the one that's the most important because they could have gotten rid of all that other stuff. Their little would-be tiptoeing around having to make a confession that, okay, these guys, they're all of them have some sort of problem with the black community. The black community doesn't like really any of these guys. They tried to find ways to tiptoe around saying it. It wasn't until literally the very end of the article that they finally come out and say what it is. The shortest portion of the entire article. So who are black voters supporting in 2020? Currently, no candidate, including Biden, has the same kind of appeal to African Americans that Obama and Clinton did. There you have it. Who are black voters supporting this election cycle? None of the candidates have the support that Obama did, or even Clinton for that matter. And keep in mind, Hillary Clinton didn't have enough support to make it to the White House. So if these guys don't even have the support that Hillary Clinton did, then forget it. They're not making it to the freaking White House whatsoever. What'll happen is they'll have their black butter biscuit brigade out there. They'll have the pork chop preachers and the political prostitutes. And they'll have their boule suck-ups out there cheering for them just like they did for Kamala Harris. They'll have the NAACP saying Donald Trump is a racist. And they'll have their same old audience of 65 to dead demographic clowns in the audience sitting there. The few who are not on pacemakers or who are not so old that they can't clap anymore. They'll go, that's right, no more Trump. Sure, they'll have their same old gatherings with the same old irrelevant people. Kind of like what Mike Murphy was saying about what the Republicans needed to do if they were going to actually try to get Barack Obama out of the White House and they didn't want to have to own up to the realities. You'll be chewing up the seat, you'll be chewing up the furniture and feeling very proud, and you'll have a lot of applause lines for your same old supporters, and you will still get crushed at the polls. You would need the support that Obama had if you're going to get the presidency. Hillary Clinton's support won't cut it because it didn't cut it for her. But the last sentence of this little article pretty much sums up the fact that even the white media is trying to send a message that, hey guys, you might want to change up the rhetoric. They're not falling for the con game. Whoever comes in first in South Carolina may win an advantage, but only if he or she can use it to reshape the competition for black voters' support. Now, you see that? What it's saying is, even if you win in South Carolina, well, that doesn't matter because one of them has to win. But it's only going to benefit you if from there you are able to use your win as a means to reshape the competition for black voter support, because right now you got a bunch of folks who black people do not like. It's not a matter of you haven't used the right argument or you haven't had the right shill or the right black mascot. Oh, maybe if I get Killer Mike. Ooh, maybe if I get Public Enemy. Ooh, maybe if I get some other rapper. That'll make me seem hip now, won't it? That's what they're trying. They're trying to use these black mascots, and it's not working. The same old Trump is a racist scare talk isn't frightening anyone, and it's not distracting us from what our interests are. When you read the Washington Post little article, while they're busy talking about all the things that black voters didn't like about Pete Buttigieg and don't like about Joe Biden, the one word that does not show up in this entire article, which lets you know the white media is terrified and what they're terrified of, the word is reparations. They don't mention reparations at all. And this is supposed to be the Washington Post, the paper of record. And what is the biggest issue that black people have been talking about? The main thing that they've been saying, even Tom Steyer had to mention it. Whenever these clowns have actually wandered into one of their safe sock puppet Negroes' little domains, whether it was Big Bird or the Breakfast Schlubs or whomever, they had to bring up that issue of reparations with the black community. But you got the Washington Post deciding, well, you know what? We are declaring that reparations is irrelevant. Black people don't care about reparations, and we're not going to mention it because if we do, then what we're doing is we are helping to push that message, and we're not going to do that without them realizing we don't need them to. When the Democrats lose again, and you're going to have all these white leftists who are going to be ripping their hair out because they didn't get their way, it's going to be a matter of people are going to be talking about it whether the white media mentions it or not. But the fact that the white media is not bringing up the single biggest issue, the single biggest hot button. Why was it that Kamala Harris got her butt run out of the race? It was because of the fact that we looked and said, this woman's not going to be doing a damn thing about reparations. So you would think that the issue that matters the most to black people certainly mattered a lot during the primary debates last year. But now you got the white media deciding, well, we're not bringing that up. That lets you know this is precisely what the issue is. Oh, we'll go ahead and give a tisk-tisk to Pete Buttigieg and the police because we don't think that there's too much of a political price to be paid because all we have to do is promise police reform or sensitivity training. But we're not bringing up that reparations thing. We're not bringing that up at all. Because we're not going to amplify the idea that when the politicians are running for office and talking to the black community, well, you'll pay a price if you do not back reparations. That for them is the unholy of unholies. But for the black community, it's the only issue that matters. So this is what the task is next. The task is it's time to start crashing their party. It's time to make it very clear we're not asking for our tangibles. We're taking our tangibles. We're not asking you for permission to speak. We're taking the mic. We're not asking you if the black agenda can be part of the political discourse. We're shoving it down your throats. Black folks have got to start getting a spine and start being comfortable with being unpopular, because usually the most powerful people in the room are the ones who are the least popular. Bloomberg's got the most power in the room. That's probably the reason why he could sit there and say, how many of the people on this stage have ever started or run a business? Donald Trump had a lot more power than any of the men on that stage. The people who actually get their way are not the ones who are trying to be everybody's buddy. It's as I've always taught you, that if you want to be popular with everyone, which seems to be black people's perennial obsession, that seems to be our nonstop fixation. We want everyone to like us. Well, if you want everybody to like you, just keep doing what black folks have done. Just say yes to everyone. When the alphabet people come up to you and say, is it okay to molest children in the bathrooms? Just go ahead and say yes. And when the illegals come up to you and say, hey, Negro, there should be driver's licenses for us because we got here, and for you guys, there should be discrimination and gang shootings by Chicano gang members. That's what you guys should get. Just go ahead and say yes. And when you have the feminists saying that there should be abortions, particularly in the black community, and white women should get preferential treatment for everything, just go ahead and say yes. You want to be popular with everyone, just go ahead and say yes to their agendas. Just go ahead and say yes and you'll be popular. But if you want to be respected, if you want to be powerful, then you better start learning to say no. Because what happens is when you say no, people have got to think twice when they deal with you. They can take you for granted as long as you keep saying yes. They use you for a doormat because they don't have to think when they deal with you. But when you start saying no, when they show up, now they're going to be a little nervous. Now they're going to be like, I better pump my brakes. I better watch my words. Because this person over here, they will reject you just on a freaking whim, on a reflex. Now what happens is they got to actually put out some effort and put in some work to get your consideration. Because you're establishing what the rules are. So we are not supposed to be sitting here trying to figure out how do we vote for the Democrats. What we're supposed to be figuring out is how do these bastards carry out our agenda? Which one of them is going to be doing our bidding? Oh, none of them is doing our bidding, then none of them are getting our vote. And the white media can go ahead and ignore that all they want. Hiding their heads in the sand doesn't change the fact that the black agenda is still there. However, hiding their head in the sand does make it easier for us to kick them in their pale, hairy behinds. And that's what the black agenda is doing. The black agenda is going to be shoved down your throat, and it's going to be rammed up your keister. And we don't give a damn how unpopular that is. We don't give a damn how much you don't like it. And we don't care how much pain or discomfort it puts you in. Welcome to our world. You get to see what it's like to be us. And worse than that, not only are you going to be in a hell of a lot of discomfort, but you're going to have to pay us for the privilege. And this is something that's not going to be going away on election day. Because that's what they're hoping for. For them, this is a desperate moment. What they see is black people are disengaging from giving our support to this political system. That's what's really at stake here. As I keep telling you, see elections the way that your oppressor does. Elections are basically a poll as to a public plebiscite as to how many people in the society are going to revolt against the status quo, against the system that's been set up to rule over them. When people disengage from the system, what they're saying is the system is not legitimate. And when enough people disengage, what that means is they start looking for an alternative. Right now, black people are disengaging and making it clear that the only way we're going to engage is on our terms. And no amount of scare talk, no amount of black mascots who are saying, vote for my white massa here, that's not going to work. And no amount of white media Inc. or broadcast or websites that are talking around our tangibles are going to get us off the issue. We're not going to lose heart. We're not going to lose steam. We're not going to lose interest. And we're not going to decide that we're going to put tangibles, put our reparations on the back burner. And, well, if we vote for these guys, well, I'm sure we'll have their attention. No, you bend the knee and you pledge to us those reparations first. Then we talk about the vote. See, for the longest time, we've had it backwards. Okay, we'll vote for you, and then after we get you in office, we'll talk about reparations. Nah, forget it. We had it totally backwards. We talk about them reparations first. Then, after you go ahead and take that pledge, then we can talk about whether or not we show up on election day. But keep in mind, reparations is just the beginning. The black vote must be paid for in annual installments. And you do not get to skimp on any of that. We let you know what the debt is, not the other way around. Black people standing in their own power and talking boldly to white supremacy, that's a brand new experience for black folks. It's part of the reason why so many black people are shying away from it. We're going to lose friends. We need allies. That's coward talk. That's the talk of the spineless and the talk of the corrupt and the talk of the traitor. Because you never see them saying, we need a coalition with these black folks. Instead, it's a matter of how do we get these Negroes to get behind what we're doing. They're not trying to make any coalitions with us. They're trying to figure out ways to use us. And a lot of black people like being used. Well, we don't. We're going to teach the whole damn nation a political lesson this fall. And that lesson is black people are not scared. All the scared Negroes are voting. But the Negroes who got some guts, the Negroes who actually understand where it's at and what it's got to be, the black people who are changing the political profile of America, we are putting a price tag on the black vote, and we are deciding what that price tag is. And we are also punishing anyone who fails to pay it.